So for those of you who are just popping in right now, we're just getting some stuff set up, getting Josh in here. I apologize for the wait. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Let me know if there are any issues. Hey, Josh. So give us a second here. We're just getting everything set up.
Hey,
Hey, Josh.
you can hear. My camera
Yes.
won't work. My camera won't work on this.
So,
Yes, it will.
yes, it will.
No,
Yes. Click the thingy, and we're live right now.
it's not. It's not letting me do it. We're live right now.
Yes.
As soon as, as soon as-
Um,
what?
so the bottom right dots, you should be able to click settings and then open up the video chat or like the camera that you're using.
Yeah, it actually went through a whole thing where it was telling me that it's no good. Camera
Mm,
failed, it says. And that's the only one that comes with my laptop. I'm not doing anything extra. Yeah, it says camera failed.
okay. Let's see if we can get this figured out.
Like it sent me a whole series of messages as we began about why my camera failed, and I was like, don't know what you're talking about. I use this camera every single day.
How?
Oh, maybe it's because, you know what it is, Matt? I'm using a Zoom still.
Ah, yeah, that's got to be it.
End meeting for all. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. The important part, I think, is that all of this tech is just so smooth still. Come on now.
Right? Exactly.
So you find it all just so smooth?
We're so smooth here. It's always so easy every time we set this up.
All right, man, I am on now. And so is this being passed like to your Project Mindfulness Facebook and everything right away?
Yes, and it's on
Hi.
Instagram and it's on Twitch as well.
Hi. Oh,
Ah,
hello.
Josh. Hi. Okay, I'm
And how do you
just
do it so I can see you and me at the same time?
yeah, I'm just
Like, I feel like,
getting that set up right
shoot,
now.
I find this pretty hilarious, man.
I know, right?
Because if we all look like old people, like literally, if you look at the camera,
Just like, oh, what are we doing here? Oh,
it goes to show,
Josh.
it goes to show how new the tech is, though, right? Because like over time, it's probably going to get so perfected. Like this is going to be a whole thing where it's super easy to do this. And right now, I see there's like 5, 6, 7 different programs people are using to multicast right now. Because so many people recognize the need that they're just rushing in with all these new programs. And I just think it's
Yes.
funny how uncohesive the whole thing is. So,
And it doesn't even make any sense. Like right now, I'm using a setting that should be working, but it's just totally not working. So,
um, I actually have like also a thing where being a meditation teacher and being a person who is into mindfulness very much so, like this is like my life's work and everything. Sometimes I'm literally at the computer just why won't you fucking work? I clicked all the buttons I was supposed to click and it's just not working. And I'm like, that's just hilarious when you think about it.
yeah, it really is.
Can you imagine like Sadhguru just being like, fuck sakes.
Oh, he probably is every single day.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
probably. We're
so we're
all
gonna get
human.
creative here. We're gonna get really creative. You ready for this creativity?
Yeah, shouldn't there just be a gallery view just like with Zoom where it just shows both of our
I
faces?
fucking wish, man.
They're like the regular ass, like
well, listen, you do it once and then you never do it again, hypothetically, right? Am I right?
Yeah. Is anyone watching? Can you see if there's like people
Yeah, there's
watching?
some people watching. Okay, so I've got both of our faces up on the screen. It looks a little janky, but we're just gonna run with it. Does
Okay,
that
because it's not up on mine. It doesn't look like I'm talking to you on mine, and my little face is like way the fuck over there, and your little face is way the fuck over here. So
just yeah, it just open up the stream and you should be able to see us. We've got some viewers on Twitch, on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm gonna open that stuff up so I can see you guys commenting. I'd love to hear where everyone is tuning in from right now. That would be freaking awesome. Um,
I just recognized that the way this works, it would only the comments would be on Twitch, and they'd only be on Facebook. They're not actually cohesive coming into you, are they?
so they hypothetically should be, but they're not. Unfortunately, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are from.
Welcome,
I can see comments from Facebook and Twitch in one place, but from Instagram, that's a total no go.
welcome to the new age. To the new age. Welcome to the new age. Like we just have no idea what the fuck we're doing. It's
Yes.
hilarious.
Oh, what's up, Anthony? What's up, Peg? Yeah, so I've got this background on. I thought it would be sort of sexy while we had this discussion. Maybe it's not the right choice. You let me know what you guys think.
I can't even see you as well. Like from my perspective, you're actually an avatar now.
I am Avatar. That's correct. Thank you for recognizing that, Josh.
I meant the big blue creatures, the alien ones.
Yeah, exactly. um, so for everyone who's tuning in for the first time, my name is Greg Jacoby. I'm a co-founder of Project Mindfulness. This is Josh Coleman. Josh and I have been friends for almost a decade now, man. We met in India, which is sort of crazy. And we wanted to come on and talk about meditation in a modern context. Um, that can go in so many different directions. I think we're going to get in some really creative places here. I'm still opening some live stream stuff up, but Josh, if you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone, what you're all about and where people can find more stuff about you, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, cool. Well, I feel very, very blessed to be on this show today. Again, as Greg mentioned, we've known each other. It was actually 2012 because I went to India for the 21st of December 2012 thing and met up with you and a whole group of people, man. Like we had this like quasi community of people coming in India that were no one really knew each other, but all of a sudden there was like 15 people who didn't know each other that made a crew. And then that crew was like coming and going, and we'd all go on trips and then find each other in different provinces and cities and stuff. Like it was just so fucking cool. And
Yes.
that the particular magic of that travel trip and all of the connections that you and I had and the connections that we all had together was like profound. Um, I think one of the things that was exciting to me was that living in a place where people at the time weren't even really talking about these things. Like if you mentioned the word mindfulness or the word chakra or the word presence or any of those things, people probably for the most part wouldn't have even known what I was talking about back at home. And so to go to India at the time was all of these people that had that thirst for knowledge and that quest for a spiritual adventure. And we'd already been doing our study and not really feeling super connected to our people at home. Then all went on these big ass trips and all met each other and were able just to communicate in a super like new way. And so that was pretty cool. Uh, so I've been teaching a form of meditation since 2007, 2008. And it has evolved so drastically over the years. The reason that I wanted to do this particular thing on meditation in a modern context is that I actually really tried to do both traditional styles, and also like really new agey meditations. Like really was doing both of them and really trying to make them fit into my life and into the lives of the people I was facilitating. And honestly, just over the course of the years, just recognizing that the new age meditations had like pretty serious limitations. A lot of them, the limitations were because they had almost become like a new religion. The idea of everyone has to be positive, or I'm going to visualize myself into happiness, or um, uh, like kind of like a shallow attempt basically at this new paradigm of meditation that was coming through. And then a lot of the traditional types of meditation had such serious restrictions. Like if you go to Vipassana, which in my opinion is probably the best traditional meditation you can access, it's completely accessible. The teaching is direct. It's very, very potent. You spend a lot of time meditating and a lot of time doing internal work. But the limitations that they impose are quite dogmatic as well. So, for example, even if you've done a Vipassana once or twice, you might then come out of that and think, hey, I'm going to go hug my friend. But then you might have an internalized dogma that came from that, like, oh, I shouldn't hug people, or I shouldn't play music, or I shouldn't enjoy the material realm. So it's almost like two poles. On the one side are these traditions that are beautiful, but also like very strict and quite dogmatic and quite like we're right and everyone else is wrong. And then we've got this open platform of all these new age meditations and all these new spiritual practices that were just shallow as fuck, like didn't have any roots to them, so they didn't really help and aid in true or deep transformation. So what I've been working with basically is just finding a way to refine the field of both of them in order to come to something that's actually quite transportable, accessible, non-dogmatic, and that still has that strength of impact and transformational abilities. So what I'm doing is something called presencing, and it's basically an expedited vipassana. So in vipassana, they get you to feel this little area here and feel the air as it goes in and out on the upper lip, and really get into the observation of that sensation. And then slowly they move you over the course of days, they move you into feeling more and more of the body until eventually you recognize yourself as a quantum field of sankharas, of wounds and of patterns. And as you sit there in the presence of those wounds and patterns, that starts to do a transformation. Well, I've basically got a format that we do that whole thing in about 1 hour. And it doesn't go as deep as a 10-day retreat would be, obviously, but at the same time, it is quite powerful and also easy to be able to hop in for shorter amounts of time. So one thing that me and my good friend Grant, who will probably be on here soon, teach is like micro dips. So being able to go into a sense of presence, that means letting go of all mental activity and story, and getting into the sensation on a physical, energetic, and spiritual level inside the body. But doing that for 5 seconds is actually fucking powerful. And if we have the tools and the ability to jump in and just do a very quick dip into presence, just even 3 times per day for like 30 seconds, it is fucking crazy what that does to you, especially if you already have quite a bit of practice in that. So obviously, if you're just beginning this, like extend the practice. You get it to a point where it feels like it's something you really know you can do. It's not a gamble. But then once you've got that, being able to dip into these things or even kind of just have that be the way you live, like have that presence be the way that we live. And then when something disrupts it, which does happen, of course, either mental activity or outside activity or something's going to fuck it up because that's just what life is. Being able to use those tools of being present to the pain or to the distraction or to the whatever that comes up allows us to move into something better. So in a world of distraction, I guess all I want to say is in the world of distraction, in a world of unconscious pain that the whole of humanity is connected to, being able to just go in for just a moment, be incredibly present, refresh the field, and then come back to whatever we're doing with that freshness goes a long way.
Mm. Oh my God, man. Yeah, you brought up so many responses for me. Um, First of all, like harkening back to the extremes of total tradition and total new age. I'd love to hear from anyone who's watching right now. If you have experience with the tradition, if you have experience with new age practices, feel free to share that. Would love to hear what kind of experiences you guys have had. I know for me, Josh, like I for years have been oscillating between a really traditional tight mindset and a super open-ended sort of new age mindset. And I've found that, as you were saying, both of them have such intense limitations. I remember when we were creating that community and having all these crazy things happen when we were in India. um, I met so many people who talked about things like, killing the ego and, transcending humanity and stuff like that. And I remember, especially as a new meditator, I was so confused by it. I was like, so confused by it. You know, at first I really wanted it. I was like, this sounds amazing. This is what I want for myself. I want to transcend my humanity. I want to get out of this thing that I consider, you know, to be painful. Um, it was a very confusing process for me. And what I've found more and more and more, um, finding that balance each and every day is so important, so important. And just checking in with yourself, like when these internalized, you know, when these red flags come up, you know, especially with Vipassana, right? I spent a lot of time in the Goenka Vipassana community, and I had moments when I would get sort of this internal ping where I was like, this doesn't feel quite right. This doesn't feel like something that I should be putting a lot of my energy into, or this particular rule doesn't really make any sense to me. And there was a long period of time where I ignored that, you know, against my better judgment. And going through this process of working on developing more presence, you know, it gives you the opportunity to listen to yourself when those intuitive moments, intuitive flashes come.
That's just it. Like the cool part about presencing and being in a state of presence is that our intuition is much stronger, and the ability to feel what's right and wrong is not because someone told us or it was written down and we read it back. It's an actual sensational experience that we have in our bodies, and there's a danger in that too. I've met people that are like, I always trust my intuition and I never use my logic and I never read anything, and I'm like, oh, careful, 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 because like a lack of critical thought is like a massive issue, especially in new age thought, like a massive issue. And it leaves us open to being manipulated as well. There's like heaps of like new age streams going on right now that are like incredibly manipulative and have a potential to hurt people quite a bit. So I'm not suggesting that particular thing, but when you're in presence, we're present to our critical thinking, we're present to our intuition, we're present to our feelings, we're present to ourselves in whatever form that takes. And yeah, just being being present to oneself is a practice also that's very take home. It's nothing that you have to go to a retreat center for. It's nothing that you have to read um, heaps and heaps and heaps of books, or we don't have like there's not one overriding teacher that's saying, hey, that's right, or hey, that's wrong. It's actually a very experiential experience too, because like for me, I make mistakes quite regularly, and being present to those mistakes, having an awareness and a consciousness that's integral. I learned from those mistakes quite quickly. Whereas in the past, it would have taken me a lot longer if I wasn't in these present states of mind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Anthony said definitely both with New Age and traditional yoga practice, monk like asceticism, both obviously have their limitations and kind of squelch out room for the authentic person to exist, let alone be explored openly. And hey, Octavia,
Mm.
what's up? I completely agree, Anthony. I mean, it's sort of what Anthony and I were talking about a couple of weeks ago, Josh, is like in this process of exploring different belief systems, um, which is so valuable, you know, going through this process of experimentation and self exploration, it can be really easy to get caught in a fixed way of thinking. And there was, you know, when I was first coming into touch with Buddhism, um, I was really excited by this idea that, and I'm going to paraphrase something that the Buddha would explain, that if you ascribe to any belief system, you've sort of lost the way. As soon as you believe in something as if it's 100% and that's it, like you've sort of missed the point. And that's something that I've tried to remember, you know, over and over and over again. Um, you know, as I've sort of drilled down into my own personal belief systems and often found some really like scary shit, things that make me really uncomfortable, you know, really shadowy stuff where I'm like, wow, Greg, like I remember this one moment I had with my partner years ago where we had gotten into some friction and we were in a fight, and I suddenly had this flash of realization that I liked the thrill of the fight, like the thrill
Mm.
of the argument, like it tickled me, like it gave me something, and that I was subconsciously pursuing fights with body language and thought and language because I got something out of that battle. And man, it's like on the surface level, I'm like, I don't want to fight. I hate this. I hate the way it makes me feel. I wish this didn't happen. I wish we didn't have to go through this. But when I saw that little thing that was going underneath the surface, I was like, damn, Greg, like, you little fuck.
You're your own troll.
Yeah, totally. Inciting myself with flames and fire. Um, Also, I'm gonna cancel the Instagram stream. I realize that I messed up the way it looks. We'll have to get it working next time. I apologize to everyone who's watching through Instagram. You can switch over to Facebook or switch over to Twitch. I'm gonna give that a cancel.
I'd love to talk to you about all of this more technical stuff later too.
Yeah, definitely, man. Let's figure it
Um,
out.
well, let's go into that a little bit more, though, Greg. That's a huge point. I remember David Hawkins wrote the book Power versus Force and Letting Go, two of the more profound teachings just before he died. And he always said, like, the only way to heal something is to find out where you're benefiting from it. If you find out that you're getting something from something negative, then there's a part of our subconscious that will continue to look for it. And I completely understand. In fact, I'm in a very stable partnership right now, and like very stable. And she's very stable and very grounded. And every now and then I catch myself doing that. And she can like just respond so presently to whatever's happening. And I'm like, right, like I almost just created an issue that didn't exist, or a way of, I started to communicate in a way that implied that there was a fight about to happen, and that
Yeah.
wasn't where she was coming from. And like, and so at this point, literally, I'll start the sentence, like I'll be like, well, you, and I'll be like, out loud, I'll be like, oh, well, saying you and pointing the finger is obviously about to create the same problem as always. So let's dial that back. I'm experiencing a moment, and just being able to, in the moment, also have that space within ourselves and within the relationship to reformat what we're talking about at that any given time is really fucking cool. Like, really fucking cool. I feel so, so, so lucky to be a part of that. And to, like, one of my favorite practices is, what if I'm just a piece of shit? And it's actually really, really liberating. It's like one of the more, I don't mean the self-deprecating, because I have, like, even Anthony is watching this, has seen me go through these crazy things where I'm like, I'm a piece of shit. It's actually not that either. It's just, yeah, there's a part of me that's a piece of shit. There's a part of me that is egotistical. There's a part of me that will hurt myself or others if I allow it. But in just recognizing and accepting that that part exists, that power is taken out of it considerably. As we all know, or as we've studied here, the power is in ignorance. The power is in not knowing. The power is in a lack of consciousness. That's how that it becomes empowered from a backdoor movement. So being able to say, like, look, I've got great qualities and I've got shit qualities, and being able to be really honest with myself at this point about that, it really helps. Like, it just makes things, it neutralizes, it creates healthy, clear communication. It creates healthy, clear perception of myself, which is not, oh, you beautiful beast, you're always perfect. And it's not, you're terrible and no one should love you. It's like literally this middle ground of like, oh, I can see either of those manifesting at different points.
Right.
um,
Yes, man.
yeah, and this helps considerably. Like that change in attitude has created a deeper authenticity within, and of course that's manifest outwardly.
Presencing and
But
meditation in a modern context, like how can we integrate that into our daily lives, like you mentioned at the beginning, like just coming into presence for a few seconds. It's like, fuck, like as soon as those thought patterns arise, as soon as that, like, and I can even, I can tap into it right now, like this knot in the middle of your stomach, or this anxiety around your heart center, these physical sensations that crop up alongside self-harmful thought patterns, where you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna like stop what I'm doing, come into presence, and it's just let the mental fluctuations die down. Just feel what you're feeling. Just feel what you're feeling. And that process of moving through there, and like obviously at first, man, you get sort of knifed in the back by your own mind. They're like, your mind is like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, pay attention to me. Like, let's go, let's stoke this fire. Let's get upset. Let's engage in the self-harm. Let's engage in the self-hatred. And what I always like to say, it's like, it's just a habit pattern, like any other habit. Maybe you're addicted to cheese, or You like to go to bed at 4 a.m. It's just a habit pattern. These thoughts are just they're just habits. And just quickly here, what's up, Fizzy Elf? It's great to see you again. Um, Octavia has a comment here. When I was around 20 or 21, I was heavily into lucid dreaming and astral projection. To be honest, I was far more skilled in lucid dreaming. However, I'd like to focus this comment more on astral projection. At that age, I was capable of intentional AP and daily intention, lucid dreaming. One time, I attempted what I call an energized astral gate, however, it came out as a hyper energized, which is dangerous, and that process ended up damaging my heart chakra temporarily. In short, what happened was that I attempted a projection, but the energy used was too charged and caused a rebound. After which, the area where the heart chakra is hypothetically located was physically painful for about a week or so. What is your opinion on this?
Oh man, that's the best fucking question ever. So detailed and so specific, and like I really, what's the name of this person?
Octavia.
Octavia, I really appreciate you commenting and making again such a clear distinction and clear question. I did something similar with Kundalini rising a couple of times actually. Like it wasn't astral projection, but it was actually in taking universal energy and feeling my body, but to the point where my root chakra wasn't strong enough to hold it. And it actually created mental illness and blew physical meridians inside my body as well. It actually took like 2 full years. I'm glad it only took a week for you, brother. It took like 2 full years for me to heal from one particular load. And when I came back, I I'm lucky because I ended up integrating what I was trying to do. So in other words, I was trying to increase awareness. I was trying to increase the energy field, and it did. And it blew out my circuits. And after 2 years of integration, I was able to accomplish what I was trying to do. But that is a very common thing to have happen, man. And that's why I really think that a neutral mind is where to live. To go into the highs is fucking cool, but having a neutral place to live, and then from that living space, so I'm just being like, there's nothing particularly exciting actually. I don't even have to make up like that I'm a big mission for myself or a big purpose. Like I'm just a person sitting in a room. There's nothing more to it. Then from there, so let's establish the fact that I'm just a person, an ordinary person too, not even a special person, not even like a spiritually adept person, just a fucking human being just sitting here. But from there, if we can get ourselves rooted in that neutrality, the ability to go into highs, the ability to go to allow for lows to come through as well becomes so much more whole and so much more integral because it's not chasing anything in particular. But that being said, to have a spiritual experience as you have and to experience some sort of backlash is completely common, completely normal. And if I look to my own life and the people around me, I can see heaps of that, man. And usually, unfortunately, because the scripts in mind is so strong, that gets turned into something that can take us way further away from presence. Because the minute we start to try and fix or heal that problem, that can turn into its own sankara into itself. So being able to let go of even that, so I've like let go of all spiritual experience I've ever had. I'm not even anything other than just this neutral blob in this room right now. Doing that a couple times a day takes the heat off of all of those more intense experiences I've found.
Yeah, takes that charge out. And Josh, do you want to share for those who are not familiar with the term, what is a sankara?
Sankara would be like a knot, like a block, an accumulation of pain or an accumulation of mental and emotional pain that kind of sits in a place in our body. And as long as it's there operating in the background, it kind of dictates our life as well. Like, yeah, it's pretty trip, isn't it?
It's such a trip, man. And for those of you who are familiar with Project Mindfulness's guided meditations and courses, I often refer to sankaras as habits. I just call them habit patterns. Um, God, man, I remember the first time I heard the word sankara, I was so fucking scared. I was like, "Oh God, I've got sankaras," and I remember the teacher at the time was like, "Yeah, and you're always building those sankaras. You're contributing to them every single day, pretty much every single minute, actually." And I was like, "Oh my God, what am I doing with my life?" Uh,
It's funny actually. I went to the doctor and I tested positive for Sankara.
oh, Josh,
um,
and during a pandemic too. Oh man.
exactly. It's actually interesting that you said that because I think that one of the initiations or dangers, whatever way you want to look at it, of learning something new is taking it so seriously and either becoming fearful, so avoiding, or praising and trying to like catch the biggest high or the thing that is like literally the growth process of a human being when learning something new. So anything new, it could be a philosophy, it could be a spiritual path, it could just be how to use a yo-yo. There's going to be a feeling first of I'm going to be the best at this, followed promptly by self-sabotage and pain. uh, in my own experience, for everything new that I've done, that's what happens. And if you look to humanity and the way we integrate new technology and new philosophy and new things, we usually do it in a way that is not quite integrated at first, obviously, because we're still learning it. And in that moment when we're first learning something, yeah, like you're learning about sankaras, all of a sudden you're learning about the ego. I'm going to get rid of that fucking ego. Learning about the presence. I'm always going to be present, but the joke is that to be present, you don't have to say I'm always going to be present, because that's actually another subtle layer. So anytime we're learning something new, though, that is probably going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know for myself personally, I know to the hundreds of people that I've spoken to about this, they've gone through this arc, right? Like, I there was a time in my years ago when I was obsessed with the idea of like the stages of enlightenment. There was a time when I was obsessed with being perfectly celibate. There was a time when I was obsessed with the concept of being perfectly moral and perfectly honest at all moments. And, going through these different phases was so educational and so painful at times. And I think that it's important to move through these phases. And I know, like, in hindsight, just being able to have that perspective and remembering, like, I'm moving through a phase in my growth and development. What we're discussing here right now, like, this is a phase in our personal growth and development, and who knows what's around the corner, what's on the other side. And just remembering that when we're in pain, when we're suffering, when we're in moments of intense self sabotage, when we're in moments of intense, self, um, you know, grandiose thoughts, and I am on top of the world kind of thing going on. And again, I mean, it just comes back to that again and again and again and again, like meditation in a modern context, integration, coming into presence whenever we, can remind ourselves, whenever we remember. And it's the same thing, like in the practice that's my favorite to teach, which is just a very basic practice with the breath. The part that is a practice is that remembering to coming back to the breath, even when a distraction pulls you away. It's just remembering. And you're not focusing on the breath at the exclusion of everything else. You're just making the breath a priority. And it's that same thing with that presence that you talk about, Josh. It's like if you can just remember presence, you come into presence, and you're not excluding anything. You're just like, oh yeah, here I am. Here I am. And
Yeah, and that includes the knowledge that I could self-sabotage tomorrow, like
yes.
but in acknowledging that, it happens less. It's a huge joke.
Yes, yes. I feel like that's where people start to say um, meditation is a miracle. There's magic in meditation, et cetera, because it is this really wild thing where it just sort of happens on its own. Just sort of happens on its own. That inside that presence, it just happens on its own.
Totally. Yeah. And when it comes to, as you were talking about, like chasing perfect states, that's a real thing, man. And like trying to be perfect at anything, let alone spirituality, let alone the connection to the universe, trying to be perfect at that. That's a fucking tall order, don't you reckon? Like that would be the biggest order a person could ever experience, is being perfect at life itself. And I get the drive for that though, and I still can feel that drive for me sometimes. When I look back at my own work, sometimes I get a bit judgmental of myself. And when I think about like when I got into a fight with my daughter the other day, I got into a fight with her, and at the end I was like, oh, I just feel like shit, man. Like that's not nice. I don't have to be fighting with a person all the time in order to like. There's there's like these little markers or experiences where I'm absolutely not perfect at something and I still feel that fuck, I wish I could. But then if I can only be present in those moments, like if that's the time for me to be present to feeling a bit like shit, being like, okay. Then it was interesting because I had that like maybe a week ago, I had an experience with my daughter where I felt like shit afterwards. And then last night, the same thing almost manifested itself, but a whole new form was taken over. A lot more awareness from both sides and heaps of communication. But it actually felt kind of feeling that poison of pain last week, just a little bit, not enough to destroy my life, just a little bit. And then to build on the presence of that feeling in order to turn it into the presence of something better.
Yeah.
um, and meditation uh, in a modern context also, if we want to talk about this presencing practice, the idea is that it's, what if we did go to a monastery and live there for 30 or 40 years? I had a teacher that taught me that he's met people that had been in monasteries for decades and they still had the exact same problems. The exact same ghosts were following them because they weren't being present with the issue. They weren't allowing themselves to feel that uncomfortable feeling. And so you could sit there and use mala beads and do chants and do the same meditation for 8, 10 hours a day, but that's still not being present to the problem that's actually coming up, and therefore it will persist.
Yes.
Um, and so, in a modern context, I don't have decades to go and sit and do that. I don't think a lot of people do. We're on these cool growth paths where we're growing quite quickly, and our ability to communicate that growth is quite strong. So that's why, in a modern context, a presencing practice that is just accessible in the issues that are happening right now.
Right here.
Not a, it's not about other things to accomplish in the future, and it's not about the way things were in the past. How am I feeling right now? It's like, yeah, right now I'm all right, and then it's like, oh, right now I feel a bit anxiety. Like, oh, a little bit of resentment's coming up, but just being that honest with oneself and still functioning in the world, in my opinion, is quite a spiritual feat unto itself, and it is not fantastical. It's just being real in the moment while living our lives as we normally would.
Yeah. Yeah, Josh. And it, as you know, like I'm in the marketing world, and one of the things that I see a lot are these sort of get rich quick schemes. I see it all the
Mm-hmm.
time on my Facebook, on Instagram, these ads where people are selling like, wanna get rich fast, like follow these 3 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing in the meditation world. I see it all the time. Like, speed up your progress by doing such and such, or do this or do that. There is no way to grow other than facing what's going on. And that's it. And there's a billion ways of facing what's going on, but it always comes down to facing what's going on. And I again, it's that self-sabotage thing where it's like, man, I mean, it happens for me on a daily basis where like I'll catch myself, some little anxiety will pop up, or some self-deprecative thought, or maybe some anger towards someone over something really silly will pop up, and then immediately that like whole complex of habits that comes along with that little thought, it just inserts itself into my mind. It's like, wow, I'm such a bad person, I can't believe I'm having these feelings, or like, geez, like, or like today, like, oh man, I'm supposed to go on at 8 p.m. and like talk about meditation. How can I do that when I'm like experiencing anxiety, or I had like a depressive thought, or like an upset thought with a friend of mine? It's like, holy shit, man. Let's get real. We are fucking human beings who go through this incredible rainbow spectrum of experiences and emotions and feelings, and that shit is not going anywhere. That is not going anywhere. And it's about developing that presence to be like, okay, like,
Wait, it's not going anywhere unless you meditate for exactly 200 hours.
like, oh, shit, you got me, Josh. You got me. I was trying to trick you, you know?
Did you know that was the golden formula written by God himself?
Yeah, 200 hours exactly. But if you meditate a second over 200 hours, you lost it.
That's right,
Yeah.
exactly. So keep a good timer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did cut you off, man.
No, I that's the thing. Like, and it's not to say that rituals and systems like that aren't incredibly valuable tools that can support us in this, process that we're all going through. But, as soon as you look at something as that's going to be my savior, you look at something outside of yourself like that's going to save me, And that's that mental process that comes where you're like, I just have to do that and then I'll be okay. I just have to do that and then I'll be okay. That is a never ending, infinite loop.
And funny enough, that's like also the Buddha's primary teaching. And I think if we looked a little closer, it's actually Christ's primary teaching as well. And yet both Buddhism and Christianity both fall into that trap really, really strongly, which I find just kind of hilarious. Like
Yeah.
if you were to take the arc of the teachings and then being turned into a religion and then slowly but surely losing its impact and turning into more empty rituals rather than actually the finger pointing to the moon, which was just to be present in this moment and that you are already connected. You don't have to do anything to reconnect. That's who you are. And all of the practices are just to remind ourselves of what we already are, not to attain something new. That's what the Buddha and Christ, I believe, were trying to teach people. And it's just kind of fucking hilarious to watch the way things are twisted.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day we see that kind of stuff. I see it inside myself too. You know,
Like,
it's so much simpler than we want to believe because we've
it's
been
so much simpler.
we've been conditioned so hard to overcomplicate things and like make a whole story and a whole thing about it, you know? And it's so tempting, and like I'll even like go through the actual step-by-step thought process. I'm like, but if there's no story around it, then like what am I even going to do? Like what am I it's so boring if there's no story, you know?
Yeah, because you're gonna have to be bored for a second, and like 1 second of authentic boredom is actually a lot of times more healing and more helpful than like again decades doing certain. This is just like a moment of authentic boredom.
It's so true, man. And you know, it's funny. There's actually, you know, in Buddhism, in Vipassana, there's a stage of insight in Vipassana which is characterized by that boredom, where you're like, "Wow, this is so fucking boring." And then you move through that, you know, and it's like these different stages that come through, and you know, when there's a stage where you realize, you know, thing that this sense of emptiness strikes you, and it's so demoralizing. You're like, wow. You're like, wow, everything is empty. This sucks. What am I going to do? Like things I thought were so exciting to me in the past are no longer exciting. But again, that's just a phase that we move through, you know, because that's just another thing to like integrate with your presence.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, and that's hilarious. And then again, imagine how much is created in boredom as well. Like the amount of times that we do create like big ass stories about how fucking great we are, about how fucking awful we are, about the world and how it runs, about everything. And actually, imagine if we were all just perfectly ordinary. You know, it wasn't actually like, and I don't mean that and to take the wind out of anybody's sails either. Like, it's fine if we're gonna put the wind in our sails for fun, let's fucking do it. But if it turns out that we were actually a lot more ordinary than we thought, a lot less special than we thought, then we'd probably be able to interact a lot better as well. And then when we did take on big projects or we decided to take on big philosophies, it would be less about how fucking special and amazing we are and more about actually putting the thing into practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Fizzy Elf said from Twitch, there's a whole community based around chronic pain, a lot of it back pain, and some of the best solutions turn out to be mindfulness and emotional work at acknowledging our anger and pain and where it stores itself. So much
Mm.
so, and I, you know, again, like going back to what Josh was saying about that field of presence and like feeling our body and mind sort of as this quantum field where we can feel different wounds and different things coming through. Like, yeah, damn right. These patterns store themselves in different parts of our body, and that's where this esoteric psychology about chakras was born from, because different
Mm.
parts of the body correspond to different components of our psychology. And that's why it can actually be a really helpful practice to be like, oh, I'm feeling pain in my heart. Like, what is the
Mm.
heart symbolized by? What is it associated with? And that sort of self contemplation can lead to greater awareness and understanding of ourselves.
Can I lay down my favorite quick bite chakra teaching? Are you even still there?
I'm ready, dog. I'm
Sick.
so
Okay,
ready.
cool. So the chakras were a big thing that I was teaching when I was more into the new age aspect of things, and then teaching later from more of a traditional standpoint. And now I feel like I found a really good center on it. Um, I don't like when chakras are turned into a visualization. Like, in other words, if I'm like, okay, my solar plexus is a bright golden yellow, and it is the mudra, um, and it is the symbol, and it is like, to me, that is getting very, very far away from the very direct sensation in my solar plexus as it is right now. So that's my only kind of warning, is that a lot of times it's really easy to build an intense visualization about something that actually exists in this present moment as it is. It's nothing that we have to create anything else out of. And so I remember one time teaching a Reiki class, and one of the students was like, "Hey, I got a bone to pick. Before we start this class, I don't believe in chakras. What of it?" And I
Throwing
was
the
like,
gauntlet
good.
down.
I was like, good. What are you going around believing in things for anyway? And what's the point in believing in chakras? I believe in chakras. I believe in chakras. That to me is going to take us very far away. And so what I said was, have you ever had a hard time expressing something, and in your throat it felt like this? Have you ever had a heartbreak, and in that heartbreak there's an actual physiological pain that cuts across the center of your chest? And of course, that we all have. That's a part of life. I'm like, well, that's your chakra. Like, we don't have to turn it into a big fetishized spiritual experience, but actually, this is just the way our body works.
Hmm.
And so, going through the chakras, there's also a lot of teachings are about opening. It's always about opening. It's about opening. You can open too much. It's very, very possible. An easy example would just be to express the heart. If our heart chakra, our heart center, the energy surrounding this intelligence, which I call it vibrational intelligence of this area, is focused on, obsessed over, and then it's the only thing that we open up fully, we can become a martyr, meaning that I give so much of myself away that I have nothing left for myself. However, in the same heart area, if we are feeling cut off and blocked and there's wounds, we're not giving any of ourselves. We're connecting to other people. That's going to feel isolated and lonely. So if we look to each of the areas of intelligence, we can call them chakras, but I like calling them areas of intelligence. There is an over exaggerated and then there's a deficient form. So let's go through them all very, very quickly. With our root chakra, when we're feeling our legs and our hips, if it is super open, which means we're focused and it's dominating, then we're going to be attached to the material realm, because that's our root chakra. This is where we connect to the material realm. So if that's all we're focusing on, it's going to be possible to start to stockpile, hoard, and really like just be like, I am stuck in this body. But if we're disconnected from it, as most hippies and people like myself, fairy type creatures are, completely disconnected from the ground, then we are flimsy as fuck. In an energetic sense, we have no foundation, and it's super easy to be knocked over, bowled over, and to fall over all the time. So the middle would be to be comfortable with my connection to the earth, to be comfortable with the connection to my body, but not to obsess over nor deny it. Moving up into the sacral, this is right below the belly button. Let's actually, if you're with me right now, watching this live, please feel these areas as well. When we feel this area, what does it feel like when we feel cut off in that area? There's a lack of sensuality. There's a coldness. There's an inability to feel soft and pretty and nice on the inside. However, when it is exaggerated, a lack of sexual and emotional boundaries is there. So, in other words, we're like outwardly questing to try and find something to fill it. And I personally, that would be the thing that I've experienced quite a bit in my
Hmm.
life. So, if it's too open and it's dominating, then it's going to be take over everything. It's all about just fulfilling my little emotional needs. But if it's closed off, then we don't even are not in touch with our primal and emotional needs, and that can be just as much a problem. With the solar plexus, if it's deficient, it's essentially just shame, the manifestation of shame. So there's a feeling of like, I'm worthless and nothing about me is good, and I've got no power in my center,
Hmm.
no energy in my center, and I just should go fuck myself. But then on the other side, an exaggerated form is like what we think of as incredible egotism. And the intensity of being like, I'm always right and I'm the fucking leader and everyone else bow down to me. Like, that would be the exaggerated form. In the heart, as we spoke about, either completely cut off or giving so much of ourselves that we're like depleted in energy, and that's not a lot of self love in that act. With the throat, if there's a feeling, it starts to cut off, then it starts to back up because I can't express myself.
Yes.
But on the other side of that is dominating conversations and bowling people over and being like, I'm going to talk about what I'm talking about, and you can all just seriously screw right off. So that again, the balance is just being able to express ourselves as it comes up and listen to other people. With the third eye chakra, have you ever met a person with a dominant third eye chakra that's like maybe a bit exaggerated? I believe that's actually just what mental illness is. Like incredible forms of mental illness in terms of potentially schizophrenia, certainly incredible anxiety. When paranoia starts to take over, that's taking in so much information that it's actually unmanageable
Yes.
and things become quite cloudy. And on the other side is if we don't have a third eye or an intuition, we feel like we're in the dark. Like nothing makes any sense. There's no cohesion to the universe or to our lives. So that's not good either. And then the crown chakra is if it's completely blown wide open, like I'm only crown, I'm all up here in the crown, then you're like a lollipop, man. Like the big energy, and then this like flimsy ass stick, and in that it becomes possible to obsess and become fundamental over those types of things, like being like a religious zealot essentially, but also being so disconnected from the ground and from our bodies that we're not even really able to have any sort of impact here. And on the other side, if that part is cut off, then obviously that's awful. We're not connected to the source. We're disconnected from a spiritual source and really stuck in the body. So each of those chakras has an over exaggerated and a deficient form. And if we think about our whole body as being whole, that means that we want to have each of those areas of intelligence open and communicating with all the others. So being connected to the ground without being exaggerated on it is beautiful. It means I'm comfortable in my body and I'm comfortable here on the earth, which is something that a lot of Buddhist theology never really got to. We're always trying to get out of it, right? Um, I'm comfortable in my sexuality, then I know when it's time to be able to express that with people. And it's a very in the moment feeling that we can actually manifest that's not necessarily too much or too little. If our solar plexus is strong, then I can make decisions. I can say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree, but it doesn't really matter to my self confidence. It's possible to be real. And if my heart is open, but not, I can connect to people, but I'm certainly not going to hurt myself over that connection. And here again, it's the ability to express oneself without pushing it onto other people, the ability to see clearly, clear as day with that third eye. I'm able to see the things around me and I'm able to see the patterns in life, but I'm not going to let it overwhelm me, nor am I going to ignore it. And then to be able to be connected to our source through our crown, but also making sure to connect that crown through the whole rest of our body. So that's my bite-sized chakra teaching that I feel could be very helpful because it takes away a lot of the mystery and illusion, in my opinion.
Yeah, the beginning of an esoteric psychology masterclass right there. And I
Yeah,
think it's so important to remember, you know, a lot of what Josh is talking about here is not necessarily literal. It's a framework through which you can view your experiences, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I know for myself, like I've experienced pretty much every single thing you just went through. Like I've gone through an experience, whether it was deficient in a certain area, over efficient in a certain area, or I'm feeling comfy. I feel like I've gone through every single one of those throughout my life. Some stronger than others. Um, I know. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
just one final point is that we're always going to have imbalances as
Of
well.
course.
Like it's not like, cool, now I've got these all in their perfect place, but it's a great reference point. If something does start to fall in a different direction, it's like a point of awareness, basically. That's all it is.
Yes, yes, and that's so important. It's not there's not a goal here of like aligning everything and then you're done. Like then you're good forever. Like no, this is just something that like is always everything's in flux and in flow here, and these things are always going to go out of whack according to a situation. And sometimes it's necessary. Like sometimes you need to over focus in a certain place because of a certain situation that you're in, whether internally or externally. And then you have to sort of self correct coming back, moving forward. And that's fucking life. Like, that's life. And, that's what we're here to build awareness about. Um, yeah, I mean, oh, Sean here says, I use the key phrase be mindful, pause, connect. Yeah, I love that. It's a great way of just sort of reminding yourself to pause and bring in awareness to that moment. Um, yeah, I know, Josh. Like, so many of the things you went through as well are so societally present. You know, especially something like sexuality, which is something that worldwide has so many gaping wounds for men, women, and children. And that's an area where I think probably one of the most common and easily recognizable places where we can see either a deficiency or, you know, sort of over energizing happening. And
Hmm.
you know, and again, like, that then bleeds into that shame process where you sort of knocked out your seat of power and confidence, and then suddenly you're like, oh my god, I'm a horrible person, or whatever it is. And yeah, I mean,
Or I'm a horrible person, or I don't deserve pleasure.
yes,
Because that's the different aspect, right? I don't deserve pleasure. That's all kind of part and parcel in the same thing.
yes, exactly. And I think I know one of the things that's so important to me right now in my life, and what I see in your teachings, Josh, when you're streaming or you're posting or whatever it is, that just feels so important to me right now, is just saying, like, we are all human. We all go through these things. We all go through these things in our own unique individual way, according to our life circumstances and our mental conditioning. But we all go through these things. And even just a tiny drop of awareness of that can go so long in gentling the way that we deal with ourselves and gentling the way that we deal with each other.
Like it would be a completely different world because we'd be communicating based on compassion and our ability to recognize our imperfections and grow together. Like it actually, that would be just us deciding we're all going to grow together.
Yeah.
That's all it would be. If we were able to understand our humanity and other people's humanity as being essential to this process, we would just start to grow together.
Yes. And that, like, that is the foundation of compassion. You know, saying like, "Oh, I I know what it feels like to be hurt. Like, oh, you're going through that thing too. Like, oh my god, I see that in you. Like, shit, man, I felt that too." And honing in on that thread that connects all human beings, that shared human experience, is the roots of the flower of compassion, where I'm like, oh my god, Josh, you are a human being and you feel the same things that I feel fundamentally. And
Yeah,
oh
and the
fuck,
negatives and the positives too, right? We all
yes,
overcome things in our own way. Our successes are similar, and our failures are similar too.
yes, yes. And yeah, sympathetic joy, like, oh my god, yeah, Josh, you're killing it right now, like, that's so exciting. And man, what can I say? Like, it's so exciting and special, especially because it is ordinary. These are ordinary feelings and, like, ordinary human experiences. But when, even for a second, we're able to, like, drop that, you know, drop the shit and be like, oh, this is real right now. Like, even just a single moment of that is so healing, is so powerful, and honestly can be completely life changing. A single moment of that can completely change the trajectory of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I very much agree. It is an hour's been up. I can't believe how fast that flowed.
Oh yeah, man. Jesus.
I love I love live streaming so fucking much, man. Like if I had my way, this would be no more pre-recorded videos and just live streaming away. Like I really think it's potent because the viewers that are watching right now are a part of this. The energy that we're all sharing, the experience that we're all having is like one that's together. It's not necessarily removed from just what's happening right now. It's all present. That's what live streaming is. There's presence in the video.
Yay. Um, so, for those of you who tuned in, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion about meditation in a modern context. Um, my name is Greg Jacoby. I'm a co founder of Project Mindfulness. This is Josh Coleman, a guest and a dear friend. And you can find him. I'm actually going to post his Facebook link. His Facebook
So there's
page's link.
two of them. Yeah, just my personal page is the way if you're interested in seeing my
Okay.
whole process, and if you want to see the work that me and my wife are doing, it's called Ethereal Misfits.
Let me post your personal page publicly here for those of you who want to check out Josh, he does offer group and one-on-one sessions. Um, both himself and his wife doing a lot of family work. Congratulations, Josh! You just had a baby. That's crazy, man. But yeah, I really, really appreciate everyone attending tonight's live stream. And please don't hesitate to reach out, to contact us through social media, to email us, to fire us off a message. We really want to hear about your experiences, field your questions, just have a chat about it. And again, just to emphasize this is about reminding everyone that we are all our own best teachers. And this is the process of building a community of mindfulness and a community of presence. This is not about, differing the playing field by saying, such and such person is a teacher and you are a student. Those are all phases and roles that we move in and out of constantly throughout life. And I am really holding that vision of a world where we're all, supporting each other and giving each other a leg up as we move through these, the challenges, obstacles, joys, loves of the human experience.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Josh. I love you so much, brother. Have a lovely day today, and let's connect again soon.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.